Sorry, this is not an episode of Parks and Recreation, but this was actually what we experienced at the stakeholder meeting at Santa Paula. So we did our report on Santa Paula's EIR scoping meeting, which was held on March 2nd. EIR stands for Environmental Impact Report. You're gonna hear that a lot, so remember that. In this is a guideline only and does not prohibit development. It will tell you what could happen if you were to do something. Santa Paula has their first and only EIR in 1998, and they're now updating it because California passed a law requires them to do so. So they're also updating their general plan for 2020, which includes the EIR. The budget of both general plan and their EIR is about $3 to $4 million, and a consulting firm was hired to do the EIR. So the sphere of influence is the boundary of the city. This does not really directly connect to tourism, but it would definitely have some sort of relation with it. And speaking of the stakeholders who attend the meeting that day, there were 2 city councilmen. They are the people who make policies that can incorporate tourism into the city. They could also rezone the city if wanted, and they could determine where the funding should go, which could be a direct influence on the city in general. And there were 2 women from Ventura County. We don't know what's their role or what was their title, but Ventura County have an impact on Santa Paula because the county is promoted more widely as a whole rather than just individual cities around the area. However, those ladies did not get a chance to speak up much other than raise the concern about the floodplains, so they were not really involved in the meeting.
6 residents. The residents did not have much to contribute to the meeting, unfortunately. Most asking questions about what to say on the form or what environmental feedback is acceptable to write down. Asking unrelated questions to the topic. They were there to ask questions about their concerns that were unrelated to the environment as well. For example, 2 residents left once they found out the meeting was not about repaving the roads. The EIR company, the consulting company, should look at environmental emergency response impacts. Since 1998, they have new technologies and they should look at the impact of these technologies. Another stakeholder were 3 people from the EIR scoping company, the consulting company. They were there as facilitators to get feedback from the residents about the environmental concerns in the area, so that they may address them in the EIR update plan. When the question was asked about the roads, it was met with a condescending response from the City Hall woman. The City Hall employee doesn't have a good repertoire with the residents. A woman from the City Hall was also attending the meeting. It seems like she was running the meeting and helping to facilitate with the EIR company in answering questions the residents had. She seems like a government middlewoman working for the city, potentially on the general plan update. She knew the residents and had impact on tourism through the city. As for the section of the assessment of community involvement, it seems like there's no involvement of the local community at all. And the focus is what the city did to advertise the meeting. The email and the flyer only addresses what scoping is about, but leaving out the EIR section. The community doesn't seem to be very educated on certain meetings the City Council has.
So the policy implications and the impacts to tourism that were discussed within the meeting, the first one was that the EIR scoping meeting has to be held as part of the process. So they identified that as you needed to get general comments. It was part of the process. They needed to leave it open to the public. The second was after the public review process, they have to write a draft of the EIR and get written responses, and they have a 45-day period of open for public comments. The comments will all be published online. They weren't specific about what website it would be on at the meeting. They also specified that the draft is only an update to the 1998 plan, and if nothing has changed, they are not going to readdress it in the new plan. So it'll be kept the same as the old one. The citizens can rebuke if they disagree and think something should be covered in the plan. And the handouts in the meeting of the EIR were the sections that were to be revisited and addressed in the new plan. So we all thought that was pretty interesting, a pretty interesting point. The impacts to tourism were not necessarily implied or discussed, because nothing was really discussed in the meeting about the impacts of environmental concerns, but we came up with we kind of derived from that the potential rezoning and urban encroachment of agriculture areas is a definite environmental impact if they are to develop in commercial areas within Santa Paula, and it is set to have a plan in new development in East Area 1 for have it as a commercial zone, which was rezoned and adapted into Santa Paula. So we think that this is a positive because more visitors will come to the area, and this may lead them to museums in the downtown area, and it will help visitors to stay in the local community as well as residents. They don't have to go up to Oxnard or Camarillo, but the negative of this is that it might take away from the historical downtown area and take away from local businesses. It has the potential to. And this could definitely affect the environment, like I said, and they should really assess the environmental damage before it is built, since most of Santa Paula is part of the green belt of what they call. Another issue or impact that we kind of identified was if they have an influx of tourism, say from the Ojai area, and it's really bringing in wealthy tourists, and they decide to buy land or property in Santa Paula because it's so close to Ojai, it could definitely start to push residents out, and they won't really be able to afford the area because of who actually lives there right now. And also, if we have an increase in tourism, we'll see a lot more solid waste and an increase in sewage pollution. So these are just kind of the things that Santa Paula should kind of be thinking about when it comes to environment and tourism.
Finally, for the assessment of politics observed in the meeting, we all agreed that there were a lot of power dynamics happening in the room. For example, when the city councilman spoke, everyone listened to him. But yet when the residents were to speak, everyone talked over the residents, there were side conversations, and it seemed like nobody really cared what the residents had to say. Also, like Tal said earlier, that when the one resident asked about repaving the roads, he was shut down with such a harsh tone that again, it seems like, well, why are the residents even there? We also thought it was an interesting choice to hold a meeting like that in a government building. So a lot of times when places will want the input of residents, they'll host a meeting in a school or in a library. Even the party room at a restaurant is what my hometown does. So it feels like if you really want the honest input of your residents, you should host the meeting on neutral ground, not invite them into a government building to give feedback about the government. And also we saw some gender politics at play in the room. There was one resident who really wanted to know what geographical areas would be included in the environmental impact report, and he kept asking, well, where are the boundaries, where are the boundaries? And the woman facilitating the meeting from City Hall kept trying to point to a map on the wall and saying, well, if you want to know the boundaries, like, here's the map, just look at the map, they're on the map. And he just wasn't listening to her, and he basically told her, no, you don't know the answer, you're not the right person to answer my question. And he kept interrupting her, and finally, one of the men from the consulting company jumped in and said, "Sir, all the boundaries are just city boundaries. If you want to know the city boundaries, look at the map on the wall." And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, good, thank you." And we all looked at each other like, what the heck just happened? She literally just said that. And also throughout the whole meeting, she just kept getting interrupted. She couldn't get a sentence out without getting interrupted, and the people who kept interrupting her were mostly the men from the EIR consulting company. They would even try to jump in when somebody would ask a question specifically about the city. The consulting men would jump in and say, "Well, I think the city does this," and she works for the city. She knows, and yet they didn't let her answer her. So basically, in conclusion, the meeting, we all walked out and we said, wow, that was a real-life example of Parks and Rec. The meeting was disjointed, the meeting felt very unwelcoming, and there were a lot of very clear power dynamics in the room. The goal of the meeting, which was to get residents' feedback about environmental concerns, was not accomplished at all. It seemed to us that they had this meeting just to say that they had it and to comply with the law. The facilitator, we think, could have asked better facilitating questions. She basically just said, "So what feedback do you have?" and left it at that. When we thought she could have asked more prompting questions. Maybe there are environmental concerns that residents don't know are environmental problems, and to them it's just their daily life. So she needed to ask more probing questions in order to get some of that honest feedback. Based on our research of the city for our tourism plan, it seems as though the same disjointed, real-life Parks and Rec experience is also how they plan tourism. So thanks for watching. Good night.